What's going on with this thing? Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host, and pretty funny story behind the scenes here. I was in the wrong stream, wondering where everyone else was, but made it. Here we are, starting the show here tonight. My guest is Ed Wilson. We had a gentleman named Seth. He couldn't make it. He's actually sick. A lot of people are having this flu. I guess he has it. But anyway, just so you see up on the screen right now, this is a blog from Charles Lear. By the way, I think I counted just under 170 blogs that Charles has done on our website. So check that out. They're all historic and they're great ones here. 1976 Encounter Report from Spain. That's this week's blog. And if you want to listen to the audio blogs, they are on our podcast feed. You can get that anywhere. You can get our podcast anywhere as well. On anywhere you can find podcasts, you should be able to just look up Podcast UFO and it should pop right up. And so if you wanted a commercial-free experience, you can support us for just $2 or more a month at Patreon, and that link's right on our website, which is podcastufo.com. Real excited about tonight's guest. We have something not similar. We are cut from the same cloth in many ways. He is a antique and rare document books and documents. He's a dealer, and he's like myself out there, always looking and interested in history. That's one of the things I love about the connection of antiques and the historic connections. As some of you have watched on this show last week, I had a Civil War story with Linda Zimmerman that was fascinating. So I love history. And the gentleman, Ed Wilson, like I say, he's a book and a rare book and a document dealer. And so we had a lot to talk about that had nothing to do with UFOs, but he kind of stumbled across a big archive that had something to do with a very important person at NASA, which came up at an auction. And he bought it and found many surprises. We're going to be talking about all that. And so he's like myself. I was not a UFO guy. I was in the antique and art business, auction business, and I was working at an auction gallery. And I just happened to sit in a hot tub when something flew over me, changed my life. And here I am now, still doing antiques and art. I just finished a big appraisal today. I still do that type of work. But, this UFO thing is kind of a major part of my life. Like I said, it changed everything when I had my sighting back then, because I knew there was something, as you get, if you've been doing what I've been doing a long time, and that's inspecting antiques and art to make sure, things are on the level, they're not fraudulent, or documents, you're always looking to see, if there's one document in a pile that's a fake, then you have to check each one very carefully because, if there's one, there's usually more type of thing. And it's guilty till proven innocent. So we have this type of eye when you're doing what we do, that you're really inspecting things and you're really critical of something. And so he and I have that in common. And I should do a podcast with him. I still have my Antique Auction Forum podcast. I should do a podcast separately with him on that alone, just talking about running out there and chasing these beautiful historic things. And we're only caretakers of these things, and they get passed along to the next generation, hopefully, and not get thrown in a dumpster. Sometimes they do. And, that happens a lot with all kinds of things. But anyway, I'm rambling here, and I'm ready to bring my guest in. Ed Wilson, thank you. And, I look at the background behind you, and yes, we are definitely cut from the same cloth.
I didn't know your background. I am shocked. I'm so pleased. And you're in the auction business. I tell you what, during COVID, I was having withdrawals. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Auction withdrawals. It was a serious mental condition. Just one to add to all the other ones that I already have. But
let me tell you something. I did a podcast on my antique auction podcast, and I went all around the country to all these major auction houses. And I can't remember who it was in Ohio. And he said, collectors have to collect. They'll figure out a way. They'll figure out a way. We'll all figure out a way. And he did. They did. There was all these just online auctions for a while, and you get that bug. You know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and your life's on the line when you spend a lot of money on something. As you said, you have to hit these things from every direction you possibly can to make sure the authenticity of it. I'm a rare book and document dealer, and it's paper is my specialty. And again, the thrill of saving items from the dumpster that end up in museums. That's what I've been doing, and that's very rewarding.
It is very rewarding.
Let me lay out just a little bit here of what I've got and what we've started, and then we'll get back into the actual books and the evidence. And I think you'll really like this, because I do approach this whole thing, just as you said, from the scientific viewpoint, because there's a lot on the line. As you said, my name's Ed Wilson, and I do have a different background from most UFO researchers today. Originally, I was a historian and rare book and document dealer. But that was only until I rediscovered what is the most important piece of NASA photography ever. It's called the Simpkinson NASA UFO. The only reason it survived is because NASA's original Space Task Group chief engineer, Scott Simpkinson, preserved it in his personal archive, where it stayed untouched in the family basement since 1996. When I first saw it, one thing became obvious immediately. It's an indisputable flying saucer. It is a shocking image. So shocking, I began cross-checking it against NASA's own material. What I found was this, Martin. The lithograph wasn't an isolated incident. The same object shows up again in NASA's official Gemini 11 Hasselblad photographs, and also in one of the Maurer camera photographs, and again in the never-seen 16,000 frame RCA D15 mission film I recovered from the National Archives. When you line all of them up, the secret lithograph, the public NASA photos, the hidden RCA camera footage, the objects match across all of them. They're different angles and different lighting and different cameras, but it's the same craft. We're not dealing with a single frame. We're dealing with a documented sequence of events NASA never intended the public to see. This isn't folklore. This isn't a story someone told somebody. This is forensic, archival, scientific evidence. We have NASA's astronaut voice transcripts reporting weird craft in real time. We have NASA's technical debriefings where the astronauts deny seeing any anomalies, except one, the exact anomaly that occurred during the D15 battery failure. We have a 6-minute communications gap, a classic signature marker in NASA anomalous events. We have a perfect, indisputable cloud pattern match between the lithograph and NASA's own frame S66-54585, a scientifically verifiable match that proves the lithograph originated from a real Gemini 11 photograph. Your own eyes will not lie to you. We have time-stamped artifacts on the RCA film that indicate missing digital frames that should exist but don't. And this is incredible, and you can read it for yourself, word for word, in NASA's own Johnson Space Center oral history, the testimony from NASA's legendary photographic director, Richard Underwood. In his official oral history interview, he states clearly that no one outside a small security cleared group has ever seen a first-generation NASA photograph. Every image the public has ever seen, every image researchers have ever seen, every image you've ever seen in Congress too, is from a third-generation negative.
And
I want you to understand what that means. It's really important here. It means we have never, ever seen the original NASA negatives. So when you add all this up together, it comes out that you have a lost lithograph, you have matching Hasselblad photo, you have the 16,000 frames of hidden RCA footage, you have the astronaut transcripts, you have the cloud pattern verification, the missing timestamps, the National Archives recovery, and the CIA NPIC duplication systems we now know were in operation. You have something NASA can't explain away anymore. The craft in these frames are not lights, they are not lens flares, they are not reflections. They are structured objects photographed by NASA across multiple camera systems in 1966. It's all 100% NASA imagery. Don't take my word for it. Follow the NASA trail and believe your own eyes. The American public deserves transparency. And Martin, that's why I'm here today. And oh God, you found some of that. Yeah, there you go. That's some of that old RCA footage. Fantastic. I'm glad Seth sent that to you. Seth, my partner, is unable to be here today. He's sick with that flu. So I'm glad he managed to get these films over to you. You can see.
So what are we looking at right now?
What you're looking at is you're looking at the D-15 experiment. That was the very first television camera that ever went into space. What happens is this: when NASA was going up there, of course, after 1965, the CIA took over control of all of NASA's footage. Nothing was ever released from NASA again. So when NASA goes to these events and they tell you in Congress and say, we have absolutely no evidence of anything, they're telling the truth. Because my next book is coming out here next month, and it will detail the facts that show that all the footage, according to all kinds of documents from the 1956 through 1958 HT Autotech CIA released files in the CIA reading room, show exactly how they did it and how they made lithographs, and what they are is sanitized briefing documents, and every ounce of footage that NASA put out was sent back to them from the CIA National Photographic Interpretation Center starting in 1956.
So you're saying they basically scrubbed and they worked on the
I've
negative?
got the CIA documentation for you. I don't have it here. It's the next book, and it's also included. It will be included to Congress. All these items that you've seen today, the first two books that I have to you have been sent to Congress. In fact, they've also been sent to President Trump. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware that this is something that is being examined right now. The conclusive evidence that's going to be life-shattering, I think, will be the CIA documentation that will come out next month. But what you're looking at there, guys, is this. This is called the D-15, a night vision experiment. It's called an orthicon tube, but it's really just a TV camera, and it's the very first one in space. When you get into the book, you'll see I have the details of everything. What I have gone through is I've gone through things like the mission report. So here's what you're going to find in the book, and how you can follow the trail and see that we're not messing around. There you go. That's it. That's from the first book there. That's the Gemini 11 mission report. If you read on it right there, and I know you can't right now, but I'll just explain to you. This thing was secret for 12 years. This was secret for 12 years. Says right there, do not release it. It's secret information, so it wasn't released until 1978. By then, nobody was interested in following it through except old auctioneers like you and me, right? So we went into it. Here's one of the pictures that I got at the auction in there. Look at that, guys. That is from 1958. That is the very first Mercury space capsule that was ever launched into space. It was called the Big John launch. And if you look right in the center, you'll see a lovely young lady. And right next to her is a chubby guy, kind of chubby like me. That's Scott Simpkinson. And I hope you guys aren't driving in a car. If you're driving in a car, you'll want to look at these things. You can go to Amazon, and these pictures are presented on the cover. I wanted to make sure that everybody, you don't have to buy the book to see the pictures. I've got good images on the front and back cover of all my books. This is not about selling books. This is about presenting evidence to you guys. But when you get on there, you just look up Simkinson. Everybody knows Bart Simpson, okay? So don't think of Bart Simpson, but it's Simkinson, Simpkin, Simpkinson. And if you just enter Simpkinson, it's selling everywhere worldwide. But you can see the pictures. The Amazon's really good because they show you the front and the back cover. As I said, you can see on the back cover the lovely picture from 1958. But you also see in the bottom there. Do you see what those are? Those are color-coded. Yeah, those are color-coded images of the UFO. Okay, those color-coded images are part of an 80-page report. I spent $5,000, and this is $5,000 when $5,000, well, when you were paying two Burger King Whoppers were $5, right? So that's when I spent $5,000 from a reputable Chicago-based operation. They did an 80-page analysis, and this is all in the back of the first book. The first book, I have 5 scientists that have contributed to this, and undoctored, and everything that they said and their analysis, good or bad, is in the book for you to read for yourself. They were kind enough to allow me to put it in the first
Now,
book.
what are we looking at right here?
There you go. That's the actual lithograph. That's a 6 by 9 inch lithograph. That was the very last page of the Gemini 11 binder. There were 31 binders altogether. I bought the binders for the entire Mercury, the entire Gemini, and the entire Apollo mission. Now, Simpkinson was started in 1943 with NACA, the National Aeronautics Civilian Association or Authority. It's really the Army outfit. He started out doing propellers in 1943 for them during World War II. And then he quickly was switched over to going to Wallops Island and developing the V2 rockets. So from the very outset, after he got out of college, he was already deeply steeped in NACA, which the CIA records now show NACA was deeply steeped in with the CIA too. So these people are all classified doctrine, classified contacts from way back. And just to give you an idea of what else you'll find in this book too, and this is important. I spoke with Richard, I can't remember his name. He formed NARCAP, and everyone might be familiar.
Oh, yes, Richard Haynes.
Yes, Richard Haynes.
Dr. Richard Haynes.
He contributed. Yes. In the back of the book is I think it's like a 40-page article that he wrote on a Chilean UFO that looks remarkably similar to the UFO that I discovered in this lithograph. And he was kind enough to allow me to use that in the book, because I want people to see how you do a scientific analysis. All my analyses are scientific. This is not hearsay. This is not anything else. There's documents in there that you can read for yourself. Okay.
So Ed, let me just, I want to ask you some questions as we're going along here. I know you could just talk about this for 3 hours, but straight.
I don't have that time. But let me
just ask you this.
Here's something to look at there, because I wanted to tell you this. Last week I was on, I have a fellow researcher who works with me, and that is a composite of 3 different photos, and he knows you. And he said, you're absolutely excellent. He says you're a wonderful guy, and I can tell already you are. But see if you recognize his name. He's worked with Gary Nolan, I think, on his film. His name's Mark Brabant. Do you remember Mark? Yeah. Well, he's familiar with you. But what we have there is, in the background, the large image you see is the S66-54585 red number NASA film from the Hasselblad camera on the Gemini 11 mission. All these things can be seen. You can look for yourself at all these images on Arizona State University March to the Moon. NASA has got out of the photograph business. NASA has got out of the Freedom of Information Act business. They have relegated it all, and those are the highest definition photos you can get, all at Arizona State University. But what you see there again, and before I get away from it, Mark's done a wonderful composite there. What you see, the big black background is the actual NASA March to the Moon S66-54585. Yes. Yeah. Then you see right here this darker background. Okay. See how it's lighter blue and then that's black in there? That is from page 4 of the 12-year secret mission report, page 4. That was what they showed as the very first image in the mission report that was secret for 12 years. That's pretty interesting that that's the first image that they showed. But you can see it was cut out, and it matches perfectly the S66-54585. And then, of course...
Yeah, I see.
And then, of course, over here...
It's a lithograph. Yeah.
There's
so let me just ask you this. Yeah. Let me jump in and ask a couple of questions here and there. So, as you know, generally speaking, if someone's going to make a lithograph, there's a purpose for it. They're not just going to make one lithograph and then just be put in a book. So why in heck would they make a lithograph of that?
That's what's coming out in the next book, and it's going straight to Congress. I've done the research starting way back in 1956 through 1958, the creation of the NPIC, the National Photographic Intelligence Center, and it retained that name, I think, up and through 1997. Then now it's part of the National Geospatial Organization. But what it was designed to do way back when it was created in 1956 was to provide sanitized briefing documents for top secret images. I've got the actual CIA reports for things like, what was that incident with the U-2 with Cuba? Yeah, the Cuban Missile Crisis incident, when they flew over Cuba and they took the U-2 photos of the missile silos there that nearly got the world involved in World War III way back then.
Yeah.
That was important information. But the thing is this, these guys just came out of World War II. They risk their lives. They kill their lives are on the line every day. And they are serious when they talk about, death threats and threats being issued and stuff like that. They don't let many people know these top secret things, because when you take that photograph provides you all kind of information you and I don't understand. The guy who was, what was his name? Richard Underwood. He was a U-2 photo interpreter, and he flew on those U-2 missions, and he did the photo interpretation for them. And he would go back to the lab, and he could tell you just exactly what the equipment was on the ground, just by magnification and just by shadow depth characteristics, whether you're looking at a fuel tank or whether you're looking at perhaps who knows, just a garbage disposal unit, but you also get the exact measurements, and the measurements are precise. This happened in 1965 on the Gemini 5 mission in 1965. I've got the CIA proof right there, where they tell you in that CIA release report that in 1965, the mission took pictures of Cape Canaveral. And they took those pictures over Cape Canaveral to show everybody down in Cape Canaveral, hey, here's the wonderful view of you. The CIA got hold of that, and it's called the montage report. And in the montage report, you see them announce right there that this is critical information. We can't let this information get out. Why? Because you can come up with an exact ICBM missile targeting system just from that montage of photos that they got from these NASA photos. These NASA photos, they did not realize the clarity of them was so great. But they did by the time Gemini 11 came out, because that lithograph, what the D15 experiment was precisely that. They were doing spy photographs the whole time. And there was a front out there, and everybody recognizes that now, at least inwardly. But now I've documented it. In 1965, they came out, and they came with a memo that said, from now on, all NASA photographs will come directly from us, and no photographs will be released unless we say they can be released. And then the NPIC, the National Photographic Interpretation Center, I've got the list of the lithograph machines they've got, which in this particular case is a Heidelberg press, okay? They also had a Harris press, offset press. They're offset print lithograph machines. People who do this will look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. They had those wonderful photographs of those missile silos. But if they were to release those photographs out for everybody to see them just in the plain form, then the Soviet Union can take those photographs and say, Jesus Christ, these guys are able to get this high detail here. We've got to do something. We've got to have some kind of cover up. We have to do this and that. We have to watch the scheduling for the overcoming missiles. These are life and death circumstances going on, and it's military information that can be gleaned from these photographs. And that's why the NPIC was charged with making lithographs for sanitized briefing documents.
Wow.
A large load of, you can read, I've got all the details down. I'm trying to write the book as fast as I can, but I've got all the details down, the number of people that get them. There's a large lot is like 25, you'll see in the book, probably on something like this UFO thing, to the best estimates and searching, getting a list of all the sanitized briefing documents that they did in that time period. There were probably less than 15 people that ever even knew that there was a UFO seen.
Now, are you saying this lithograph was created in 66, or was it?
It was created in 1966. And of course, I have the documentation from the lab in Chicago showing that the paper, the ink, and the age are all consistent with it. In fact, one of the things that gives it away right away, you can't see it right here, but I'll bring it up to you and show you right here in 3 places. You have to have it. I had it scanned done. It's at 1,600 dots per inch. What you can see in the background is the word unclassified. Well, you see it up here, but it comes up here and here and here too. And the reason, as I turned out, first of all, I had to research how lithographs worked back then. They had a thing called a wet fountain solution. And these old early lithograph machines used a wet fountain solution to keep the rubber rollers from sticking the ink to them in the inappropriate place. And it was scraped off, but it left a microscopic layer of the wet fountain solution, which included gum arabic. And the gum arabic got on the surface of the paper, and it did not affect visually that lithograph at that time. But after 60 years, because that gum arabic formed a coating on the paper, and there's a different oxidation rate there, you can make out the words unclassified 3 times in there, and there's other roller marks on there too. But those.
Why do you think they unclassified such a?
That's the other interesting story. This is the whole methodology of secrecy and government secrecy has changed from the years going way back to Lincoln and stuff. We've been keeping military secrets. Everybody keeps military secrets. But what happened is this, and there's a link to a YouTube video by Gordon Cooper, one of the astronauts who saw UFOs when he was a fighter pilot in Germany, describes it well. In that, and I've got it marked down to the second. So when you get the book, go into the book where I've got a whole chapter on Gordon Cooper. Go and look at that video, and he will tell you flat out exactly how they kept the U-2 secret from Congress and the American public. I've got the exact secret, and he talks about it, and he says, look, basically what he says is Congress is a bunch of blabbermouths. Our lives are on the line out here, and these guys can't be trusted to go to the store with your candy money, you know? And he says, there's no way we can let these secrets get out there. So he says, what we learned, and this is part of the spycraft. When you listen to these, who was it? David Grush talks about spycraft. He says, I'll talk about spycraft in a skiff. Oh, and by the way, the NPIC, the National Photographic Institute Information Center, is the original skiff. That was the original skiff in that building, the Stewart building. But, and see, I kind of lost track, and that's why I'd like to have Seth here. There's just so many things that are all tied in together and paint that perfect picture. What was I trying to explain to you? I'd explain something about the lithograph or?
Yeah. Well, that's initially, yes. Initially you were, because I said, but you kind of explained it. I mean, they wanted to get a briefing out there.
And it says right there, and you can look it up. I've got a list of 10, but that'll be in the next book. I'm writing it as fast as I can, guys. I don't know if I have a copy.
So let me just say this to the listening audience also, and for those of you who are listening and can't see these images, I will put some links in the show notes. Just click on that. You'll see some images and links to all these different things. I like the fact that you're sharing it out there. You're getting it out there without a lot of games, so that's good.
Yeah, it's on the covers. Look at it. Just remember, not Bart Simpson, but Bart Simpkinson, the Simpkinson UFO. It's on the covers for you to look at. Interesting things like look at the back cover of the second book, okay? Those are images from the D-15 experiment. Do you see those flying saucers right there? You see that beautiful little blue flying saucer right there? That what was caught. Oh, the D-15 experiment. Every detail is in there. This book is big. The first book is 650 plus pages, okay? And I had to cut it down from way over 900, probably over 1,000. I forget how many I had to throw away to get it relevant. And these are all documents, okay? I wanted to make sure that people knew that you can go here and you can find the information. It's not me telling you this. This is all NASA information, and it's all right there. But, and as an auctioneer, I wanted to point out to you, you want to know how valuable those 650 or what's it, 568 photos were in those 31 binders that I bought.
Yeah, let's hear.
I only sold 230 of them because I kept the most historically best ones, right? And that's what this, and that they're here in the Simpkinson UFO book. You will not be able to see that other. This is the guy who built the original blockhouses, built the original capsules, and he had the photographs from the very first Mercury missions. There's over 150 pages of those in here. But the 220 pages I sold at Heritage Auctions, okay, which I know, Heritage Auction, the world's best space auction, right? Then there's no one. Now this was back when Whoppers were 2 for $5, right? So I sold 220 of them for $80,000.
Wow. Well, now where did
these
you?
are not bullcrap photos, guys.
Yeah. So where did you? That's right. Yeah, Heritage does. Well, I actually sold some things through them before. Where did you? Let's talk about where how you found this in the very beginning.
Sure. Like you, I'm a historian and an auction goer, and I love preserving history. It's just shit. What was I? was 11 years old, and I read the entire 1959 Funkin' Wagnalls 26-volume encyclopedia, every single page from cover to cover in one summer. I don't know why. I'm a bibliophile. So I didn't like working for a living. I'm kind of lazy, and
I say that too.
Okay, well, I really am. But I mean, I can read voraciously. I'll read. I'm reading all these CIA documents, and I'm like having a party. This does not work for me. But what I did was I went to auctions all the time, and I bought these rare documents. And like you, before I paid something, if I'd call my guy up at Swan Galleries. I got a couple of good magazines, but Swan, I love them. I've sold to them for years, and they've got stuff that's gone into museums. I'm so happy. It's a matter of reward to see. God, at least I did something that I consider worthy. I saved some history there in museums for people to see. So I do that, and that's how I made my living. But there was consequently, you're familiar with auctionzip.com. Of course, people in the audience won't be familiar with it. But auctionzip.com is a wonderful service for all auctioneers everywhere in the world and for all collectors too, because what they do is they list every single auction in the United States.
General area too. You can put
by
in
zip
your
code, right? And you can go 50 miles, 100 miles, 150 miles. You can take the whole country in if you want to. But I just did this on the weekends to go and see the good Saturday auctions. And on auctionzip.com, I came across an auction about 40 miles north of me up towards Cleveland, right up by where the Lewis Space Center is now, which was Lewis Field, which was where Scott Simpkinson was the first engineer to work on the V2 rockets and stuff. Consequently, too, very interesting. There's so many leads that I'd like to follow, but I can't. It's about a 2.5-hour drive from Dayton, where the Wright Pat Field is. And, of course, we know that that's allegedly the Roswell remnants taken there, too. There might be some connection between Simpkinson and that. But Simpkinson was the lead producer, the lead engineer that headed the space task group up, built that first capsule, built the first rocket, built the blockhouses down there, basically built up Cape Canaveral. When he went down there, they talked about snakes and stuff climbing into the little apartments they were living in. It was rough. He was there, and he was the formation of NASA. People don't know a lot about him because he died in 1996. And the other thing is this: the auction that I found. And you know how hard it is to find good items. I know you know how hard it is, but I'm good at it. I looked at it was advertised as the Emily Erle NASA collection. Okay, well, Emily was his main squeeze. Okay, she was his secretary. She started in 1945 at NACA. She was down there and you saw her with the very first space task group. Inside the book, you will see a newsletter, the first NASA newsletter, and they talk so well about Emily Erle, who has the honor of being the first female employee at Cape Canaveral. She was the first.
Really?
Yeah, wow. And everything's documented. I've got it all in here for you. It's just everything. A lovely young girl, very beautiful and stuff. Scott was married and he had a kid. Now, I'm not sure about that. There, some of these other journalists that I've been in contact, I think they know a little bit more about his background. I met his nephew, and that's what happened. Emily Erle was his main squeeze. She was working as his secretary, and the only secretary, I think, up there in the NACA field. But Scott Simpkinson was married. Things were different back then. He was a Catholic, and I don't know if it had anything to do with him being a devout Catholic or not, but he was either divorced or didn't receive a divorce, so he never married Emily Erle, but they were lifelong lovers. You can see in all the back of these books, you can see all the astronauts talking about, hey, how's Emily doing? And thank Emily for doing this. Scott was a collector, too. He collected trains. and he collected stamps. And he had a lot to do, actually, with the creation of first day covers. And as an auctioneer,
Oh yeah,
there's the story behind first day covers for the people out there who don't know. It's a fascinating thing. I've got the newspaper articles in here. There was no internet in here. There's over 150 NASA photographs. Many of them were once secret. I've got the blown up components and the unblown up components that were on the Atlas rockets that they were building. Okay. And you've got these, and every page too, just so you know, it is a full page 9x11. Okay. So you can see the details in these things. The times back then, talking to the kids out here, I just want you to understand how primitive we were. You will see the first Mercury capsule is loaded on the back of a tow truck, okay? And not only is it loaded on the back of a tow truck going towards the gantry, the tow truck has split windshield screens, okay? Kids, here's the reason why the screens were split windshields, okay? We didn't have the technology to build a big piece of safety glass, all right? We couldn't build a piece of safety glass any bigger than that. And so they had to split the windshield screens in order for the people not to go through and be cut to shreds every time they ran into a tree. That's how primitive we were back then. There were no phones. I remember 1964, I think it was. It was like the Olympics, the Winter Olympics out in Europe. That was like the first time that there was any TV that crossed that you could see live TV across the ocean. Right. And I think that was like the early bird satellite and stuff. So these things did not exist, kids. There were no hand calculators. There were no pocket calculators. There was no the TV. Now we had the telegraph system, okay, and the wireless and those kinds of things. But there was no internet. So because there was no internet, you'll see in this book, I've got 150 pages also of what Emily Erle compiled as the first female employee at NASA. She collected all of the Mercury information from newspapers. And it's 150 pages, and you can read them all in the book too. The fascinating stories, to a historian, of course, of exactly what all those missions went. Now, today we're used to news being as quick as looking down at your phone and just seeing what's coming across the wires live. Back then, they didn't have that option. So what they did, and anyone who's a fan of old movies like I am, we'll see an old scene where they see a street corner boy selling newspapers. You're going, extra, extra, read all about it. It's called an extra, kids. Kids, you don't know what an extra is. An extra is this. When you have a live news story back then, you don't have any way to communicate that to the public. The public is relying on the old standard paper newspapers at that time to get the latest information. And you'll find in here, there's a wonderful, I think it's the John Glenn launch. He only did 3 orbits, guys, and the orbit only lasts 90 minutes, okay? So the whole flight was 270 minutes. In those 270 minutes, they had the initial flight that came out when he launched it, okay? And then there's an extra edition after orbit 2, okay? So think about it. We can watch it live on TV. They didn't have that back then. We were so primitive that they had someone on the newspaper come out and they ran an extra edition after the first 90 minutes so that they could give people an update on how the mission was going. We were primitive times back then. So that's just remarkable to me, how primitive we are working back then.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing appraisals back in the in the 80s, I would go to like the library and one of my historical societies and state archives and things like that and research.
There were no other sources online. It wasn't.
That's
online.
Right. I did the signer of the Declaration, Josiah Bartlett. I did his all his artifacts at auction in 1989, and I spent months researching ahead of that auction, and he had to do it all by the library and state archives and things like that, ledgers, and I loved it. I still love it.
Yeah, exactly. I spend all day doing it. I'm going through the CIA files now, and I can't quit. That these are the released CIA files, and for those people who don't know that they're available out there online, you go to the CIA reading room, and what they've done is they've been forced over the years to release as many documents as they felt comfortable with doing. But all those documents are released in there, and there's thousands of them. Now, of course, they release them in a method that makes it very hard to get the report numbers. But you can, if you're diligent and just try one tack after another. You can get it. They'll release a whole file, and there'll be one number, and that'll bring the whole file up. And then there'll be 200 individual files in there that you can bring up and read them one at a time. So,
okay, let's talk about Simpkinson and why he had what he had.
He had what he had because Simpkinson had very early clearance back with NASA working on the V2 rockets, okay? And he started out with propellers in World War II, but he was NACA, which was the basis and was that group that formed the Space Task Group. Those were all from Lewis Field up in Cleveland, the Army Airfield. It was military research, okay? He had the clearances to work on all the military, aeronautical, and destructive testing methodologies that they needed. So he was the leader. In the newspaper article that shows him and the whole group in front of their very first Mercury capsule, that whole group, I kind of wanted to try and explain something about it, but he was the group leader. So he was the leader for the Lewis Field, and as the lead engineer down there, you can read. I've read like three books on the early NASA days, and he's mentioned all throughout them. Okay, there's stories. He was the go-to guy for engineering. Interesting stories like one of the engineers who was charged with taking the space shuttle and getting it back from the California field where it landed and back to NASA, where they could launch it again. He couldn't. They were launching it. They were putting it on top of a 747 jet and flying it back. You guys are too young to remember that, but that was a crazy thing. I think they called it the pregnant guppy. They had the space shuttle on top of a 747 jet to fly it back to be reused again. So, and I remember these things, and it's hard for me to remember sometimes that people don't realize these interesting things they had to do. But the engineers that was in charge of getting that done couldn't get it through Congress. And so he didn't know what to do. And so they told him, go to Scott. And Scott Simpkinson said, don't worry about it. Give it to me. Just get it on there. And he went through, and within one day of talking to Congress, he had that space shuttle, bypassing all the safety regulations that they wouldn't allow him to fly it on there, and it was flown. He was that kind of guy. He went up on top. He and another engineer were ready on one of the early launches. And this is incredible stuff back there. You saw it looks like a garage that they built. Yeah, there we go. Oh, which one's that? That's beautiful documents, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, look at the reports that they're having there. That's from the D15 experiment. And again, briefly, let me explain the D15 experiment. You can see I have the actual photos of how that Gemini capsule was arranged. It was the first television camera in space. The purpose behind it was this. These guys were up there. They weren't just taking synoptic terrain photographs for the national not National Lampoon, was National Geographic. They were doing spy missions too. Okay, I think everybody now can realize that they said that it was a civilian agency. It wasn't. It was under control of the government the whole time along, and these were important things being done. So they were taking photographs that were spy photographs too. But you have to understand the mechanics behind an orbit. These orbits, and they're still about the same time period. One orbit generally runs 90 minutes. Okay. You circumnavigate the Earth in 90 minutes. That's still about the same time today because that's 17,000 miles per hour it takes to leave Earth orbit. In that 90 minutes, you're on the sunny side for 45 minutes and you're on the dark side for 45 minutes. Now, on the sunny side, you have a pretty good chance of tracking a Soviet missile base and getting a nice figure of it, right? But when you get on the dark side and you need to track some objects and you want to take some surreptitious photographs, which I learned now there were more cameras than even I knew about, a nice infrared one that they were using. In order to do that, you have to realize it's hard to see in the dark if you're a human being. In fact, if you check the method, if you check the biology of a human eye, it takes 20 minutes for the human eye to dilate fully for full human night vision. 20 minutes. So you've got 45 minutes in the dark, and you can't see to track
25
anything.
minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
You can't see anything for that period. So half your time you're not any use to the military reconnaissance function that you need to perform. So that's why they made the orthocon camera. It's called the night vision experiment. And what it was a TV camera in the backpack behind the small capsule in the operations console back there. There was the actual TV camera. It pointed straight down, and there was a flap on the bottom. And these drawings are in there. They're fascinating. And there's 3 or 4 components in there. There's a flap that opened up after they released from the final 812-mile high orbit. They opened that flap, and the flap had a mirror on it, and the TV camera shot right through the mirror, and that's, boom, why you got the picture going straight ahead where it comes out. Now, that was the Orthicon TV camera. They had in his lap, during that D-15 experiment, Gordon had, it's like a radar. If you've ever been a boat pilot or anything like that, you know what these radar screens are. You put your head down there, and you can see the radar screen, and you use that. Well, they had the same similar situation, and he would look through that, and he could see what the TV camera was picking up, and there you are looking at it, and look at that. That's pretty much invisible stuff there. Now, what you're seeing is that clock. Now, that's what's really interesting here, because that clock's running, and what that clock means is this. Now, it was all electromagnetic signals that went directly to the orthicon tomb for him to navigate by. So what he was doing was he was looking at the screen and trying to navigate and stay on targets so that he could follow a target. In other words, he wants to look at a missile base, so he can look at that and say, hey, I can see it on this thing. I'm not night blind. And so he would maneuver the craft and keep it in focus. And then that was their way to get these surreptitious military military evidence. Okay. So what you're seeing, that clock that's running through there, oh my God, you must have got the whole thing. Thank goodness. By the way, that's super high definition. When I ordered that from the National Archives, there were 3 labs that you can get it from. Color Lab is the lab I chose because it's the original lab. They have added 2 more labs that you can now have duplicates made from, but those 2 labs were added on basically for helping people get business that never had an opportunity to do it. But I went with Color Lab, the original, and their records go all the way back. And the guy told me nobody has ever ordered this film before, so I'm the first one. So you're looking at something nobody's seen before, okay?
Yeah.
But when I ordered it too, they had a standard set of packages of the definition that you can order it by. Well, what I did was I said, this is, number one, I forked out a lot of money for this because money is not a matter of any consequence when you're talking about something as important as this. So and there you go. See, look at that.
What are we looking at right here?
That's electromagnetic effects going on. There's strange things going on in the sky. But the point I was trying to make was, those clock screens you see are this. He had that, and it's cramped in that little capsule. Basically, when they got up in space, the very first experiment they did, it was practically sitting in his lap. And as soon as they finished the experiment, they had to open the door and throw it out the window. That's how tight they were for these 13 experiments.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, these things are fascinating. There were 12 missions on there that were very important. But there you go. There's the clock again. Now, what you're looking at on that clock, that's there's a lot of good history behind that too. And it's the Accutron clock. So that's when they first came out with, back then it was popular, called an Accutron watch. Okay,
yes, I had one.
Yeah, everybody did, because
they had a little tuning fork.
We could have the tuning fork, right?
Yeah.
So what that is he's looking through the radar screen, and that's the picture he sees. From that picture, you can tell that he can see stuff that you couldn't see in the dark with your unaided eye. So that was used for tracking. It was a major success. Look how clear those pictures are. What the clock is this. The film was separate from the electromagnetic images. In other words, that he turned it on and he was seeing that thing constantly. That was for 3 orbits or 270 minutes. For 270 minutes, that camera was running, and he was using it to track and experiment with the methodology of the camera.
Now it seems like
there's
there's so
only
many.
10 minutes of film. The reason there's only 10 minutes of film is, and you'll hear this in the voice transcripts too, as he describes the things he's seen. He had a button in his hand as he watched it, and whenever he saw something that was interesting, he clicked the button and it recorded it on film, and it recorded the exact timestamp. So you can tie the timestamp on that film right there to the timestamp on the voice transcripts, which are accurate to the second also. So that's amazing evidence. So when we see anomalies in this film, you can see the clock and the exact second the clock was taken. And where's the one thing I want to show you here? Here in the second book. This one, just for you to look at right here. There you can see, right? Now, what you see that right there? And see that up there?
Yeah.
That's the UFO.
A different one.
No, it was recorded. They were recorded over 3 orbits. Okay. For 3 orbits, you can hear them talking about seeing things. Okay. So, but this one is on that D15 experiment, and I think it's actually frame 515, JPG 515, right around that target. I showed this one on the cover of the book because I didn't want the timestamp to get out of the way. But when you get to the first timestamp, here's what you have to realize, and you can do it now that you've got the whole film. You look at the clock when the timestamp first comes on. When he hits that button, it starts the timestamp clock, right? And that goes on for about 6 frames. So for 6 frames, that clock shows. The very first frame, and the film, the clock timestamp gets stamped on the previous film. Okay, it's only taking film. It's from that electromagnetic signal only when he hits the button. So when he hits the button, the timestamp has to go on the previous film. In other words, that shows where this next series starts from. And this is a consequence of the timestamp. It shows what's in this should be in the previous segment of film. Okay. And you can look at that, and you can do that with the ones that are not tampered with. You will see it. You got to go to the very first one. The very first one, this is the bottom of the previous film segment. Okay. What they did was there's missing film in there, okay? And the way you know is because this has this removed. They removed the first one, but they didn't get these out of the second 6. And up in front of it, it's not the same thing. It proves that there's missing film just before this was taken. So the UFO is not down here, and it's not in this sequence. It's up here in this sequence. So anyways, just very interesting stuff.
Here's a question. You have actually talked to people about this. I just saw a little report you had, analysis of, Travis Taylor, who I know, Dr. Travis Taylor.
Yes.
But also, have you talked to like people that work with space film and camera, any experts?
No, I've had to do most of the research myself, okay? But here's the Travis Taylor analysis, okay? So this is something that everyone will like to see. He's got about a 20-page analysis in the book that he did for the book and for me. Leslie Keene was kind enough to put him in touch with me and have him analyze this for me. You see right here, these lines right here. That, of course, is the UFO that he's doing now. Travis, of course, is a photo analyst for NASA, okay? So he's a photo analyst. So did I talk to someone who was a photo analyst? Yes. Travis Taylor did this 20-page report. This is only one page from it. In the page, it's here because what it shows, he's pointing out in the lithograph itself, right down there in the lithograph, he makes these lines right here, and he says, well, that's orbital debris. This is orbital debris, and this is orbital debris right there, okay? So that's orbital debris. Now, this is the thing. It's not present in the S66-54583. There's a S66-54 or 54585. This is 54585. And S66-54583, it looks to me, and the photo analysis I've had done so far. Remember, I'm working around this round the clock just because it's fun. It shows that the actual march to the moon, they say that it's the Agena capsule at 300 feet. Now, what they did, they've got a series of 5 photographs that are in the book, and they are moving. They describe it in a movie I found that it was a public relations movie, is why they took it at that time. The public relations movie, they mentioned that it's traveling at 9 feet per second. So they're re-rendezvousing with the Agena capsule. And when they re-rendezvous, they're 9 feet per second. The 54583 film says it was at 300 feet from the Agena, and this one is at 90 feet from the Agena. So it traveled basically, 200 feet. Now, the question is, at 9 feet per second, how many seconds is that? The difference to the missing frame? 54583, go ahead, run it through photo analysis. It's a scan of a blank placeholder, just like the CIA would use when they remove it. Also, those 5 frames, when you get to the Arizona State University March to the Moon, and you look at these photographs, Scott Underwood worked for the CIA. He knew he talks about in his interview about how the astronauts would play games with him, trying to show him a photograph and say, okay, where was that? And he says, no, you can't fool me, because he was the expert. And he told them right off every time. He knew every down to the split second where every photograph was taken. And that is the metadata. The metadata is included in Arizona State University. Underneath the bottom, you get to the photograph and you expand it, look at it, see the UFO in 584. That's 66-54584. That's the first vision of the UFO, but it's at a distance and it looks like a light, and it's up above the Agena. And you can do, if you expand it long enough, you can see actually the sun reflective sheath of the saucer over the metal. It's just fascinating stuff. It's all in the book. There's so much evidence. I don't want to get distracted because that's what Seth's good for. He knows I lose. I've got too many details that I'm trying to get out to you guys. But what was I trying to make the point of? Can you help me? Oh, it's like I can't get you to shut up long enough to help you.
Well, like you said, it's a humor. Well, you were going along. We were talking. You were just finishing up with Travis Taylor's report and going from there, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we're talking about speed. So we've got 5 photographs there, with the 6th one at 300 feet missing. Okay. Do yourself a nice photo analysis of that. They'll say this is a scan of a blank placeholder, which is exactly, and you can read that in the CIA reports, how they would withhold that data. NASA never had these images. When you hear the testimony and NASA gets up there and tells you, we don't have any evidence to show any UFOs, they're not lying, okay? The reason they're not lying is because they never got it first. You look to the 1965 memo, CIA operative Underwood developed every single frame himself by hand. Now, from there, ever since Gemini 5 in 1965, they went directly from him to the National Photographic Interpretive Center. It's there documented. I've got it, and I'll be able to show it to you, but you can see for yourself there. It goes directly from him to them. And there, of course, their main task is any anomalies or military targets that they don't want presented. They have to share that with certain people. Generals, heads of state. NASA needs to know these things, okay? But not everybody at NASA needs to know this secret information. Basically, the largest run that I found they ever made of lithographs, the largest run was 20 boards or 20 lithographs. And that means it could only be disseminated to 20 people. And also there's a whole policy of they would have to take that. Now, these guys are photographic interpreters, okay, but they're not the mechanical engineers building the craft. So they had to get this back, first of all, to someone who was a space engineer so that he could analyze it for anything that might be necessary to increase the safety of the mission. And that guy was Scott Simpkinson. According to the searches I've done of the boards they dropped, there's probably between 8 and 15 people only that ever saw this lithograph. And they disseminated them to him for him to use in his engineering studies. And as I said, he's a top secret guy. Here's how top secret these guys are. This is the story. What was I telling you about? I was telling you about the interview. You got to go through the Johnson Space Center oral interviews. When these guys were dying off, they started 6 months after Scott Simpkinson died, so he's not in there. But he's in there, and all these other guys talking about, oh, Scotty. Jeezy, cow, Scotty was the guy that they went to for these questions. But Underwood talks about what happened to him. He started out, of course, he was a CB in World War II, and he was offloading ammunition cases and getting gunfire. And, of course, the CBs were the first guys in there. What incredibly dangerous stuff. So the man was just as brave as the other astronauts up there. But he ended up coming back and getting his education and becoming a photo analyst for the CIA, working on the U-2 missions, okay? So he's working as a photo analyst on the U-2 missions. He was down in Guatemala. And in Guatemala, I believe the study had something to do with every time you launch a missile, there's gravitational anomalies in the surface of the Earth. The Earth's not perfectly round. We know that. The atmosphere bulges here and there, and the electromagnetic spectrum bulges here and there, and the gravity of the Earth is not consistent either. We have large gravitational masses causing, say, for instance, the island Hawaii. My God, that's a gravitational anomaly right there. But you have to know these gravitational anomalies, where they are, and be able to measure them if you're going to get that missile to fly directly to the target. So that's what he was doing, I believe, on a mission down in Guatemala. He went on the mission, came back, and when he came back, there he says upon the tarmac was the most beautiful native Guatemalan girl he ever saw in his life. He says, I fell in love with her instantly, and as every young man who risks his life all the time, or even if he doesn't risk his life all the time, every young man who's breathing and healthy fell in love, and he married her. Now, this is a quote I want you to listen to. This is in the book. You got to read these testimonies. These guys didn't know back then that they were letting secrets out. It's in the NASA testimony. He says, when the general I was working for found out that I had married this native Guatemalan girl, he called me in and he told me, and these are quotes, he uses quotes. He said, I should take you out and have you shot right now without a trial.
Whoa.
This is in quotes. This is in his, and I love the guy. I love these gutsy guys because they don't give a, they don't care. I mean, they do care. Of course they do. They took him out of the U-2s, okay, and they put him back in the B-29s, which he loved. And he flew 4,000 hours of reconnaissance missions on the B-29s, and because of it, he went deaf in one ear. So he sacrificed lots for the country, but he was taken off that classified mission right then and there, and he was lucky to get away with it his life. These guys don't mess around. When you hear them talking in these hearings about guys being threatened for their lives, that's testimony right there. You can read it going way back. You can hear him say it. But what I love best is he married the girl, and he stayed with her and brought her back to University of Colorado, where he worked for the Geophysical Survey. And then Werner von Braun called him up because he was on the approved list. And they said, Werner, this is the guy. And Werner called him up and says, as I understand it, you're familiar with the reconnaissance photographs at 30,000 feet. And he said, yes, of course I am. I've done that for years. He says, what do you think you could do at 130,000 feet? Boom. And he said, I'd like you to come down here and talk to me. And that's when he became the founding developer of the entire NASA photographic department. He came up with all the classification schemes. As I said, he knows everything. And let me tell you this, too. He set it up so that you cannot track things down. It's just typical CIA subterfuge. You hold one thing up here. You don't put the pictures in order, okay? You don't release the original pictures that are on the film that he developed, okay? You don't release them in that order. You give them a NASA number. Those NASA red number letters, those were the ones released, and they're sequential. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but they're not sequential with what was filmed. That way you can't track and find out what's anomalous. And when you get to the 5 NASA photographs, that this one is one of them, and you look in the metadata, guess what? All 5 of those photographs have no metadata. They don't tell you what orbit it was taken in, and they don't give you the exact hour and time and second. So that's the only ones that I've found.
I could ask you this question. I can't find it. I was just looking for it while you were speaking.
Cool.
And that is, there was a woman, I believe the interview was in the 1990s. It was recorded. It was on YouTube, where she said she was a former NASA, and she walked in and she saw them brushing out a UFO out of a photo before they were releasing it. Did you ever see that interview?
Yes.
Okay. And so what do you think about that? Do you think that's been going on?
It sounds reasonable to me. Look, things were very different back then. Historically, here's a story directly from 1958 to show you just exactly how humanity always lets flaws through, like this lithograph. Here's why this lithograph came through. This is from the 1956 creation of the National Photographic Interpretive Center, where they made all these, who were in charge of sending to NASA what photos they could release. When they found it, the place they wanted to do it, it was originally in the Stewart building, a 7-story tall building in a seedier part of Washington, D.C. The bottom 2 floors were a car dealership, okay? And the car dealership had 5 floors above it that it wanted to rent out. So they had a sign up there saying for rent. Well, that CIA document, and this is a CIA document, it's just so wonderful what's recorded and what slips through. They talk about their creation. They say, we're so proud, and they invented the skiff there. So the first skiff was there at the National Photographic Center. People came in there to view these photos where they could be retained safely. They talk about the security measures they do. They talk about the equipment that they ordered, the Heidelberg press, the Harris offset press. They talk about the developers. They talk about the first basic rudimentary computers that they got in there. And then they talk about how we are so happy that we've got this unobservable place down here in the seedier part of Washington, D.C., and that way we don't have to worry so much about spying. And they go through all the methodology that they went to create that skiff. And then at the end of the report, they say, unfortunately, when we came to take possession of the building several weeks after we had negotiated the deal, we saw a sign on the door that says, rented by the CIA. So this is humanity. We have problems like this. So that's documented. You can read that document. Okay, the CIA. I mean, my God, all the efforts that we do to keep things secret. There's always human fallibility that comes into it. And so whether that could have happened to her, I believe it's entirely possible. Yes, I heard that interview. It was an interesting interview. There's I don't know enough about her. We have to investigate. I know who Scott Simpkinson is. I know his incredible thing. How she got it, I don't know, but it's just human nature. And like I said, so they threatened to kill Underwood, okay? He goes back. He comes in with Werner von Braun, and this is what he says. You got to love a guy like this. I love these military guys. I mean, they'll shoot you 1 minute, and then they'll stick their tongue out you at the next. And then he says at the end of his interview, and he says, and even though he threatened to shoot me immediately on the second, I'm still married to her. We have 4 kids, and they live here in Houston with me, and all 4 of them are graduating from college. And you can just hear in his voice, he's going, near, 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 near. You threatened to kill me and stuff. I'm still married to her. We have 4 kids. They're all working here with NASA, and screw you. So, you got to love it's our humanity that makes us pathetic, and it's our humanity that makes us artful too. So whether that's real or not, I don't have enough information to judge it. But when you hear that story about the CIA setting up their top secret building, and for 2 weeks there's a sign outside the car dealer saying rented to the CIA. Shit happens.
I can't even believe they would do that. I mean,
you can read it in a CIA document. I've got.
I know. I mean, but I mean, you think they would make it be some type of shell situation?
The resources we have back then. I mean, these guys are driving around. They don't have phones. They don't have cell phones. Agents are out there to work on their own. They have 100 million things that they have to worry about and take care of. It's very limited. limited reach a person can do when they're not hooked in, or when they're not hooked to the internet. You have a lot of responsibility, and you have to wing it along. These guys are doing spy mission stuff. Philip Corso. Read Philip Corso's book, everybody out there. You want to know some of the secrets. You'll see. And I just got the first edition, so I can find the exact quote again. Philip Corso mentions, he says, everybody knew that every Gemini mission was followed. And I just got the first edition, so I can find the page again. I had read it in the one of the Bantam editions that I bought. And I said, well, I know he said that, and I can't find it. So finally I got the first edition, and I'll look it up, but I know it's there. And that's just the truth. And
well, Philip, I got to tell you, I understand he's there. That could be something different what you're talking about, but he can be a little controversial. I will tell you that in the UFO world.
He's very controversial. In the book, do you remember the segment in his book where he's in the office, in the Pentagon, in his office? He's been making drop-offs of the materials to the various manufacturers that he is, and he's in the foreign technology. That was his department, the foreign technology division. Okay, then we didn't say how foreign, but it was the foreign technology division. And the animosity between the power-hungry grabs in everywhere in this world, the grab for power is part of human nature. And he was working, of course, for the Army, okay? And of course, the general he worked for, my God, what a great, amazing engineer he was, and a very outspoken hero. Walked up Pork Chop Hill. He actually went up as the general, and that's why Corso followed him so closely. But what was the point I was going to make? I was going to make the point that Corso was being followed. He noted, and he was a spy. He was over there in Italy. Read the book. In Italy, he was over there finding the hidden Mussolini UFOs, right? He talks about that in the book. And here he was working for the Army, and the battle between the CIA and the other military armed forces was severe, okay? Like Einstein said, the military-industrial complex is the threat he was most worried about. So what did Corso do? It says in the book, and you talk about controversial, right? Well, then no one's been able to document it other than what he says in his own testimony. He took his .45 service revolver out of his holster in the Pentagon, went to his CIA briefing contact who was having him followed. He slammed it down on the desk, and he said, if he follows me again, you won't have him. Now, this is the United States Army talking to the United States Central Intelligence Agency. There's power struggles going on here that are immense. And of course, we have the commercial interest of all these back-engineered breakthroughs that were secretly given out, and now they are worried about losing their rights to profits. So there's all kinds. The world is a battlefield, and we all know that. But these guys really know it, because it's a matter of life and death with them. And when they will pull out a revolver and shoot you, okay? They do that. That's part of being a spy. It's part of being a soldier.
Hey, I got to tell you, I just got to bring this up because this is totally unrelated.
Sure.
But I got to tell you, I was approached last week by someone who is a drywaller, a guy that does renovations, found a notebook. So he sends me the scans of the notebook, and I'm reading this notebook, and it's really, really interesting. And he talks about being a spy, and they're out there, basically hiding UFOs and all this stuff. And so I'm reading it and reading it and reading it, pages and pages and pages. I don't know, there's 40 pages, all handwritten. And then all of a sudden it brings up Bob Lazar. And then it talks detail and detail and detail.
Whoa.
Well, no, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. It's the whole thing was written to prop up Bob Lazar. I mean, I could see right through it. It was talking about, it was casually mentioning killing people, casually mentioning driving around, and, the cars weren't all that good that they were driving, and the men in black and blah, blah, blah. And it said they would dress up as men in black and put stuff on their face. And And
so
it
he was
was,
trying to put the wool over your eyes.
and then when it got to Bob Lazar, it just focused on Bob Lazar constantly. And we were going to kill him, but Stanton Friedman came along and discredited him. Thank God, now we don't have to kill him. And, you know, I mean, it was a whole thing to prop up Bob Lazar. Someone put hours and hours and hours and hours. So I told the guy, I said, you know, this is just a hoax. Someone wrote it up, I guess, in their spare time or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, well, he tossed it in the dumpster anyway.
So. Okay. Well, that's good. And that's exactly what we have to watch all the time. I know every time I buy a piece of art.
Guilty till proven innocent. Yeah.
Mean, look back there, right?
I do. I see that one, that portrait back there of the young lady Victorian era.
Yeah. I mean, I have to know exactly whether or not this is a hoax because it's my money. Okay. So that's right. That's some of the interesting things that I've found in the investigation. You know, these are some of the things that you can find in the book, and I've detailed it. I've tried to be detail oriented.
So let me just we're right here at the end, but I just want to ask you, do you think this is still going on now? Yes. And we have the better equipment now. We have all types of way of sensing things.
Absolutely.
So this is just an opinion.
CIA stuff, you will understand it. Now, here's what I want you to know that is in the next book that I should get released by next month. I'm pretty much finished writing it. I still have to get the thing processed and add the images that I want to it, but it's written and it lists all the CIA documents that you can look up and read the stories themselves. So I've got that compiled, okay? But what was the point I was going to make? I'm sorry. It's bedtime here in Ohio.
Yeah. But you're coming out in about a month or so after you get all the pictures and everything compiled with this new book.
Yeah, right. But what was the point you were asking about? Because
just what is it going on today, possibly?
Oh, yeah. Is it going on today? Yeah. Yes, it is. I've got 4 the highest detailed Freedom of Information Acts ever released that go to the CIA, the NPIC, which of course is no longer but it's still under the CIA. I mailed them off 4 weeks ago during the government shutdown. I couldn't enter some of them electronically because the government was shut down, and I wasn't willing to wait. I got one rejection already because I can't afford to do all this research. I offered them, here's $100, get started on it. And then I rewrote again the government clauses where, because I'm working for a report to the Congressional Oversight Committee, that you have to do this. I wrote to President Trump. I wrote to the House Oversight Committee. I said, can you do something about this? Because, you know, I offered them $100, just get the damn thing started. I've got 4 detailed, the highest detailed, most specific search of all these various places that have to be searched. There's a whole trove of information that goes from one department to another. In other words, when the National Photographic Interpretive Center sent something to NASA, sent their photographs back to them, there had to be a listing of the receipts, the times, and the methodologies that were done that. And these are the things that I've got list of the data that will turn something up if they're forced to do it. So that will be in the book. And these things, and of course, there's things in the National Archive. There's more I want to search, but I need to get this out now because it's time. NASA, and you know, I mean, there's NASA records that are going to compile and match with the National Photographic Interpretive Center, and they're going to provide this information. I had to include all the things about, yes, I want whatever you have. And here's the law that says you can't redact everything out of it. And if you do a redaction, the law says you have to give me the reason why it's redacted. Well, you have to do an extensive. I wrote 5 FOIA acts for the first books. Okay, so I got 5 of them in there. Didn't get anything back, but that was because I was doing searches then before I knew that NASA was taken out of the loop. And that's one of the most important things. This is news, okay? You're letting some news today, okay? that NASA was not in control of those photographs. Plain and simple. If that's not world-shaking news, I don't know what is. And the other world-shaking news, you haven't seen anything but a third generation NASA photo of those early things. Okay, that's own NASA documents. Those two things right there make this podcast pretty newsworthy. Okay, and it's not me saying it. You can read it, and it's not you're reading someone's falsified, like you say, pulling the wool over your eyes like the old drywall guy tried to do. You're not reading that. This is the CIA reading room, and this is also the NASA oral histories. Okay, so the stuff that I'm presenting here for observation is the best that I can do to provide scientifically corroborable information. Of that, I'm pretty honest. But those are two pretty important things right there. And that's pretty newsworthy, I think. I think when I can show you the actual CIA document, I think I got a copy of here. I mean, I've got all this stuff, but you know, I'm writing books, and every time I write a book, it's like a disaster. Oh, well, look at this. Oh, well, look at this. It's like, here you go, kids. Take a picture of that. Those are the documents. Those are the statements. They're the CIA reading room things. And that's going to that's the foundation for the book that's coming out now. Plus a lot more information too. I went through hundreds of pages of the CIA reading room stuff because that's what you and I do, don't we? You and I got to go to an auction somewhere together. Are you in New York? Where do you live?
No, well, South Carolina this time of year, but New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, right on the coast.
Okay, what's the big auction house up there? I did it. Who was it? Skinner. I used to do a lot with Skinner.
Yeah, there's Skinner. There's Bottoms has bought Skinner's now up there, and you know, but there's you know, a good friend of mine runs an auction house. He's so busy up there in Amesbury, Mass. And yeah, there's a lot going on. There's I'm trying to think besides, but anyway. There's a lot of auctions in the whole area up there.
Well, I tell you what, you and I could have a ball. The stuff that we find is just so interesting to us, and I'm glad you can do a podcast on it for auctioneers and stuff. But yeah, you and I could go on and on about the wonderful finds that we have. And I love Swan Galleries. I love those guys at Swan
Galleries. They're great. They're great with paper. Documents are great.
Right, and that's what I do. So that's why I've had it. But they haven't heard from me for a couple of years. They haven't heard from me since I found this UFO archive. So,
hey, you never know. That stuff could go well too. But anyway, thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure. I've had a lot of fun, and I like your energy. And so, yeah, we'll stay in touch and see what happens down the line here with what else you do.
Let me just share with you what I think before we go. And I appreciate it. There's so much more I could tell you, but my last thought's this. If what you've heard tonight sounds extraordinary, wait until you see it, folks. The real power of this investigation isn't just in the analysis. It's in the images themselves, the film, the photographs, the original NASA evidence that was never meant to be public. The Simpkinson lithograph is just the beginning. The D15 RCA footage from the National Archives, the 16,000 frames NASA never showed the public, will absolutely astound you. Because what you're looking at isn't just a UFO case, it's part of humanity's enlightenment. And it's a moment where we finally see what was always right in front of us. So if you want the full story, the documents, the science, the cloud patterns, the timestamps, the oral history testimony, if you want the complete investigation, it's in my books. You have to actually see it for yourselves and believe your own eyes. And I hope that Seth sent you a link. Seth has the availability. I think you got that D15 footage from his link. It's called Gemini 11 UFO. And 11 is spelled XI. For you kids out there.
I do have that.
Yeah. Yep. If you go to that site, you can download the image.
Okay.
And it looks like he gave you did you get the entire film?
I'm not sure. But if I have your permission, I know we're live. To link this stuff on the show notes, I'd like to share it with everybody.
No, that's what I want. I want Seth. Yeah. Seth is my technical advisor. Kids, I don't know anything. I'm an old man. You know, I'm doing my best to die and get the heck out of your way, but I'm no better at that than I am at running a computer. So Seth is the go-to guy, and he's a blessing. Seth's a blessing. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
This is live?
We've been live the whole time.
You mean people out there listening?
Oh
Jesus,
yeah.
I hope nobody wrecked a car, guys. Don't these things are there for you to see. I always like to give that warning. This is fascinating stuff, and I'm so glad that you gave me a chance to speak to everybody. I hope that people take an opportunity to take over. Okay, I've done about the best I could. This book that's coming out, it's going to be, well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But kids, somewhere out there, you don't even know it. There's a matter of synchronicity in this life. One of you out there is listening to this broadcast, and guess what? You're going to make the next breakthrough after I'm dead. But remember, when that happens, that I'm the one who told you that. So I'd love talking with you. Thanks, guys.
All right. Great. All right. You take care now. All right. All right, everyone. So thanks so much for being here tonight. And this Thursday at 8 p.m., we have a New York cop that and his brother, Chris and Sean O'Leary. And they are going to be talking about, they've had abductions for a long time. And we're going to be talking about that and a lot more. Thank you all for being here. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky.